Welcome to the Sound of Ideas from IdeaStream Public Media. I'm Stephanie Haney. Thank you for being with us today. Videos of the deaths of several American citizens, two of which, Renee Nicole Good and Alex Preddy, at the hands of federal immigration officers in Minneapolis this month, have caused outrage in communities across the country. In a separate incident where video does not exist, Keith Porter Jr. was killed by an off-duty U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement officer, or ICE officer, outside of his apartment on New Year's Eve. These deaths occurred amid protests over President Donald Trump's deployment of ICE in Democratic-controlled cities. Critics have pointed out contradictions in the Trump administration's justification of the killings, painting the victims as safety threats versus what's shown in bystander footage and described by witnesses. Some lawmakers across the country, including a growing number of Republicans, including U.S. Senator for Ohio John Husted and Bay Village Congressman Max Miller, have called for a thorough investigation into the killing of Alex Preddy. Democrats have called for the impeachment and removal of U.S. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. And citizens across the country, including a coalition of Cleveland religious leaders, students, and activists, have announced plans to join a general strike tomorrow that calls for the abolition of ICE. Today, we'll talk about the latest events in Minneapolis and how communities in Ohio are responding. We'll also go over why people in our state are concerned about potential ICE activity, along with what rights people have when encountering ICE with an immigration lawyer. In a few minutes, Congressman Max Miller will join us by phone to share his thoughts on the recent events. Joining us by phone now, we have Isla Blumenthal. Isla is an immigration attorney with Margaret W. Wong and Associates. Isla, thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
We also have Jeff Wensing with us by phone, president of the Ohio Education Association. Jeff, thank you very much for being with us.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you, Stephanie.
Now, if you'd like to join the conversation, you can give us a call. That number is 866-578-0903. You can also send us an email at soi@ideastream.org or message us on Instagram at The Sound of Ideas. Isla, there are certain cities like Minneapolis, Los Angeles, and Washington, D.C. that have seen large-scale ICE raids recently. Almost exactly 1 year ago, ICE raided a restaurant in Cleveland Heights. Are we seeing any ICE activity in the Northeast Ohio area lately?
We have been hearing things that ICE has been going door to door. I've seen photographs of this recently. I don't believe there were any verified sightings or reports, but there were what I would call credible information that that was happening. So a lot of the community was very afraid when that was going on. I don't believe that is still happening, but we are hearing that it might ramp up again.
We'll get to that in just a minute. There have been conversations at the state level about what could potentially happen in the state of Ohio, potentially next week. But Isla, for now, there were calls that your office received just a few weeks ago, as you mentioned, reports of ICE agents knocking on people's doors. The city of Cleveland didn't seem to be able to confirm those reports. If an ICE agent does knock on someone's door, what should people know?
People should know that they have a right to privacy in their home. And they have, even if they are not a citizen, they have constitutional rights by virtue of being in the United States. That Constitution is there for all people who are in the United States, and there is Supreme Court precedent stating that. So it's not a situation where someone can knock on a door and say, I'm an ICE agent, open the door, and you have to open the door. The whoever's inside the home can not answer. They can say, I need to see ID. I need to see if you have a warrant. And unless that ICE officer has a warrant signed by a judge, there is no obligation to open the door.
Isla, what do you say about reports that that's not the information that has been being shared by federal agents, particularly that piece about the judicial warrant?
That is settled law, and it is simply misleading that they are stating otherwise. Unfortunately, they really don't have an obligation not to lie. They are at liberty and with minimal oversight to say things that are untrue to get people to open the door. Um, Unfortunately, that's this situation where we have very little oversight and then we see this overstep of the power.
Jeff, We have heard news recently in Minnesota about the arrest of a 5-year-old Ecuadorian boy and his father. This was shortly after the father picked the boy up from school. And the family is saying that they entered the U.S. legally and have an open asylum case. They were taken to an immigration detention center in Texas, which is where they are now. And officials from the school that the boy attended say that the agents used the boy as bait at his home to try to lure other family members out of the house. As the head of Ohio's teachers union, what do you think about that?
Well, personally, when you look at the photos, it's really unfathomable that you could treat a 5-year-old boy like that, especially when he was wearing that really cute winter hat that he has on. So using students as bait, obviously is concerning. We don't stand for that. That's why we are concerned when ICE is in the area. They were in Columbus weeks ago. I think everybody saw it in the news. Um, we do not have any confirmed reports that ICE agents were in any Ohio schools, and I've said that repeatedly, but they have been in the area. We have several reports of ICE being in and around neighborhoods with our schools. So we are continuing to stick by our statement that schools are supposed to be a safe and welcoming place for students and educators alike, and that ICE has no business being present near any Ohio school or in any Ohio school.
Mm. Isla, what does the law say about schools or local law enforcement cooperating with federal immigration enforcement?
Yeah,
There is there is Supreme Court precedent that non-citizens, whether or not they are legally in the country, have a right to a public education for their children, and those kids have a right to go to school without being afraid. This kind of intimidation by agents who are near and around schools is just an infringement on that right, and it's completely unfair to these children.
Jeff, can we talk about what you told members of the OEA to do if ICE is present at or near that school? Can you remind us of that?
yeah, absolutely. First of all, our communications have been very clear. Number one, we are going to, as educators, follow the law. If you have an ICE agent that shows up or many ICE agents that show up at your school and want entry, we're not letting them in. Schools are safe zones. That is not the decision of an educator. We are going to follow district policy. We're going to alert administration to what's going on. And we're going to follow the law. And above all, what we have been communicating over and over, do not physically interfere in a situation like that. Look, schools are safe places. When I first started teaching in 1993, there were no such things as key fobs or badges or swipes or cameras in the school. We have evolved. This society has made school safety evolve and become a priority. Student safety, educator safety is at the forefront. So we do not, as educators, let strangers in the school. Right? Schools are safe places. Doors are supposed to be locked. We don't leave doors open. Same thing with ICE agents. ICE agents are strangers. We're not letting you in our schools. We are following the law and following district policy, and we're going to engage the administration to make those decisions.
Mm. We do have Representative Max Miller for the 7th District of Ohio from the U.S. House of Representatives with us now by phone. Representative Miller, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Stephanie. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
I want to remind our audience that we are talking about Northeast Ohio reaction to ICE activity across the country. If you want to be a part of this conversation, the number to call is 866-578-0903, and the email is soi@ideastream.org. Representative Miller, you are joining us mid-conversation. We were just talking about concerns of ICE activity around schools, which is something that hasn't been seen near schools here in Ohio yet, but it does connect to a concern that's been raised at the state level. So I want to ask you, Representative Miller, Ohio Governor Mike DeWine has said Ohio is preparing for ICE raids in Springfield, Ohio. This is if temporary protected status ends for Haitians across the country next week. And there's been concern about what this might lead to if this does happen for children in school, which brings us to this question. DeWine has said he does not think it's in the best interest for the U.S. for Haitians that are working here to be told to leave. So would you support ICE raids in Springfield if that does come to fruition next week?
So once again, and thank you for the question, talking about a potential hypothetical that may become a reality. But from what I have seen right now within our district, in the 7th District of Ohio, which encompasses more than half of Cuyahoga County, all of Medina and Wayne counties, and a little bit of Holmes, is that we really haven't seen any verified signs of ICE in Northeast Ohio, nor I believe has Cleveland or Mayor Bibb have acknowledged that people have seen photos, but no one's really been able to verify this. And what's happening and what could potentially happen in Springfield, the reason why I believe that if this does happen, it will be successful is because of Governor Mike DeWine. He is somebody who uses very palatable rhetoric. He is, in my opinion, a very responsible individual who is going to do his very best to make sure that the state of Ohio is safe. And I believe that he will do everything he can in his power. He has made a statement clear on how he feels about the president's position and policy and what he would like to do within the governor's state. But I have a lot of faith in Governor Mike DeWine. He's an adult in the room. He is not out there inflaming with dangerous rhetoric across the country like so many people are, Stephanie, on both sides of the aisle. So I have full trust and faith in Governor DeWine to make sure that if anything were to happen in the state of Ohio, it will not be like Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Let's talk about what's happening in Minneapolis and in Minnesota right now. Representative Miller, Alex Preddy was killed last week at the hands of 2 federal agents, and at the time had a legally holstered gun on him. That gun was taken before him. We've seen that in video footage before he was killed by the federal agents. Now, the White House Deputy Chief of Staff called him an assassin. The president said on Tuesday, "You can't walk in with guns," referring to Preddy. Now, you've called for an investigation into his killing by federal agents. We do know those federal agents are on administrative leave at the moment. Tell us why you're calling for that investigation now over the killing of Preddy.
Yeah, number one, I just want to make something very clear. My job is to represent the people of Ohio's 7th Congressional District. And Mr. Preddy is not an assassin. Stephanie, I carry a gun on me every single day of my life. And I'm glad that I do so, even for an incident that happened to me several months ago while I was traveling in my personal vehicle. I respect the Second Amendment, and I wish that Stephen Miller would have chosen his words and others more carefully. But at the end of the day, the reason why I called for an investigation is this. I saw the same videos that you saw, that the rest of the country saw, and I had a lot of questions. And those questions are starting to be answered throughout this investigation. You're probably going to be like, well, what are those? Well, as this continued to play out, Stephanie, we saw videos earlier in the day of, Mr. Preddy out weeks before, right, kicking a police vehicle and knocking its lights off. That doesn't, and I want to be clear, no one deserves to lose their life at all, even for something like that or any tragic incident. But I don't know if police knew him as a threat. I don't know if he has done anything else. I honestly don't know if maybe he has pulled his weapon out before. I don't know what the police know. I'm not there. I'm not on the ground. But the reason why I called for an investigation is because the video that I saw, definitely someone needs to be held accountable. And at the end of the day, once this investigation is completed, if ICE is the one, or if an officer used excessive force, if that individual is found responsible, then they should be held accountable. And that is why I called for an investigation, because, no one is above the law, and everyone, should have the truth. And that's what I'm after.
And Representative Miller, what do you think about the departure from what we've seen Protocol B in the past? We know that there has been an investigation that has said will be happening into the killing of Alex Preddy. It'll be led by the Department of Homeland Security, when in the past it's been led by the FBI. Do you have thoughts on that?
Well, so that's actually news to me, but I will tell you that within Congress, we have Chairman Andrew Garbarino, and he is the chairman of the Homeland Security Committee within the House. And he immediately, and I don't know if you saw this, but hopefully your listeners will look at it and look it up. His name is Chairman Andrew Garbarino from the state of New York. He has called for a full investigation. And these individuals will be coming in front of Congress, and the Security Committee will be able to ask them the tough questions. And that is how we are going to get the answers. And that is how we in Congress are able to get the truth to the American people. And so while, they may be handling this differently in the administration, I am proud to say that we are a separate branch of government, and we are handling our investigation when it comes to ICE the way that Republicans would like to do it in the House, which is much different than the administration is handling things at the moment.
I want to remind our audience that we are talking about Northeast Ohio reaction to ICE activity across the country, particularly in Minnesota. To be a part of this conversation, the number is 866-578-0903. The email to send in a comment or a question is soi@ideastream.org. And I'll return now to Isla Blumenthal, an immigration attorney. And Isla, I want to ask you, how are your clients feeling right now?
They are very scared. We have clients who are not leaving their homes. We have clients calling us and asking, what should I do if an immigration agent stops me in the street or comes to my house? There is a fear among people who are in proceedings, who are following rules and attending their appointments. And it's extremely disturbing that this climate has been created where people who are trying to follow the rules, who are trying to do exactly what the administration says they should be doing, are being treated this way.
Jeff, now the leader of the Ohio Education Association, to bring you back in here, you had talked about advice that you had shared, tips and bullet points that you had shared with members of the Ohio Education Association about what to do if you come in contact with ICE. You've gotten criticism over sharing that advice, including from former Ohio Treasurer Ken Blackwell, who said it could constitute obstruction of federal immigration operations. What's your response to that?
Yeah, I guess I would say it appears maybe some individuals haven't read my full statement, or they're relying on inaccurate interpretations, because it's been very clear. But I also think it's the responsibility of a union, of the Ohio Education Association, to let members know what their rights are, what students' rights are, what they should be doing. I think that's very responsible of this union. And I also believe that, like an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So instead of being reactive to a situation, we got out in front of it.
We do take viewer emails and calls, as we've been mentioning during the show. The number to call, 866-578-0903, email soi@ideastream.org. Representative Miller, we got an email in from Jason, who is asking if you could please clarify your response to the question about whether you would support ICE raids in Springfield.
I honestly don't know, if they are needed. I mean, I have no depth of education or knowledge about what is going on. I can very much tell you that I believe that people who are here within our country and within our state who do not have criminal backgrounds, that we need to find a pathway forward. And I fundamentally believe that. I'm proud to say that I've helped many, many Ukrainians within our district in Northeast Ohio who are on TPS right now. And Stephanie, I have one of the largest Ukrainian populations amongst any Republican in Congress. And they continue to reach out to us. And I am someone who is going to continue to help in any way that I possibly can. I have members of the community reach out to me in terms of immigration paperwork, and we do everything we can to make sure, that they can be here and stay here. And to be clear, I mean, if you're here and you're working and you want to be here, I believe that, we need to find a better, amicable, pragmatic pathway in order to get there. But once again, a lot of what I'm hearing on both sides really isn't helpful. It's a lot of this rhetoric. It's a lot from the administration, and it's a lot of people, in my opinion, who are continuing to fearmonger when, I understand people may be, scared truly to leave their homes. I myself went to a Sikh temple a couple of months ago in our district in Solon. And, one of the closing things that the individual said is just remember, you're all here, you're all legal, and you're all American. And I remember talking to every single one of those individuals after the service. And at the end, they did not feel scared to go into the community. They knew, how they got here, the legal pathway. I think on both sides, a lot of the rhetoric needs to be turned down. And when it comes to Springfield, if that does happen, I fundamentally believe that it will not be in Minneapolis. And I just want to say, 1 in 4 deportations that are happening every single day are either coming out of 2 states. One is Florida and one is Texas. And you do not see this type of response across the country. And that is because local law enforcement is working with federal law enforcement, and they are bringing the temperature down. They are not trying to continue to throw kerosene on the fire. I understand this is a very emotional time, but what I want people in my district to know is that I represent all of you and I work for you. And if you are out there and if you are concerned about your status, please reach out to our office, our Ohio 7 Congressional Office, Representative Max Miller, and I will do everything I can to make sure, that you can stay here as we did our very best for constituents across the district.
We have a call now from Martha in Aurora. Martha, welcome to the Sound of Ideas. Go ahead. We may have lost Martha. We'll come back to Martha. I think we have Martha calling back in right now. We'll give her a moment to see if she's with us now. Martha in Aurora, welcome to the Sound of Ideas. Go ahead.
I think that maybe you have somebody else on the line. This is Martha. I had called earlier.
Yes, Martha, please go ahead.
Yes. I am just for the demographics, I am a white, evangelical, Christian, pro-life, registered Republican, retired first responder. And I am appalled at the actions of the Republican Party in defending what's been going on with ICE. And I know from speaking with my friends that the Republican Party is losing Republicans by the hundreds because of their refusal to accept what we see on film in front of us and their insistence on lying, on digging in deeper to defend these ICE actions. And I'd like to know what the congressman thinks about that and whether he agrees that we are losing people from the Republican Party and whether that matters to him.
Thank you for the call, Martha. Representative Miller, would you like to respond?
Absolutely. Martha, you just asked the easiest question of the day. I'm just kidding, by the way. I'm very facetious. But look, it's a very serious question. And to answer your question directly, is this going to hurt is this going to hurt the Republican Party in terms of the optics? I believe that it will, yes. But I also believe to be true, and I can look at the data, and Martha, I can exchange contact information with you. Hopefully Stephanie and someone can help us arrange this. But the majority of the optics that we are seeing aren't coming out of where the vast majority of the deportations are coming from. Now, I'm not saying that's right or it's wrong, but everything that we see on the national news media, and that's why I value local channels like this, it's exacerbated. These individuals want to make money. They want to stir up emotion. Do I agree that it's a good idea that federal law enforcement agents are out there in mass and in unmarked vehicles? No. Do I think that makes people feel safe and warm? To answer your question directly, no. I don't mince words, and I like to think I'm very direct and unfiltered. But I can tell you very much so that not every Republican is tied to the administration. And I know that very much because I am a Republican and a proud one, that, because I support the president, it doesn't mean that I support every action that the president does. And if you were to take a look at other things that I've done throughout my time in Congress, hopefully that you would see and people would look at my voting record and the things that we have spoken out about throughout this process, even voting for the Affordable Care Act just a few weeks ago, can show that we really are fighting for our district. So look, if these things happen here in Northeast Ohio, you're going to see me out there and you're going to see me fighting for pragmatic solutions to the problem. And that's exactly what I stand for and want to move forward with. But to answer your question directly, yes, I believe it is hurting us at the moment.
As we wrap things up here, Isla, can you share with us thoughts on what people should know in preparation for if they do encounter an ICE agent here in Ohio?
Yes, thank you, Stephanie. I first wanted to just respond to Martha and the representatives exchange. I think Martha made a great point about things that we see and that we know and observe with our own senses and being told that we should overlook these things or that those things are not happening. And the representative has spoken a good deal about optics. I have to say that the optics are not misleading and they are not overblown. I see every day in my job people who have no criminal record, not even a traffic ticket, who have been sitting in ICE detention facilities in Ohio for months, some close to a year, because of the way this administration is holding on to and refusing to offer a bond to these people. This is the sort of thing that is leading to these protests. It's this overreach by the federal government. And frankly, I don't think that the American people as a whole are in favor of it. It's really unfortunate that we can't acknowledge what's happening and that we are choosing to instead gloss over it.
Thank
So
you for
I
that
thi-
perspective,
yeah.
Isla. We appreciate it. We have just a few moments. If you could share with us some tips, we would
Sure.
appreciate it.
Of course. So I think that it's very important that people prioritize safety. So I know that doing what is told, not directly contradicting an order, is important, but also knowing their rights. So don't open the door if you don't have to. Don't hand over documents or information. It's just important to look at these know your rights advisals that a lot of nonprofits are currently posting to know exactly what is allowed and what is not.
Thank you
And
so much, Isla. We will share a link to some of those resources
thank
on
you.
social media. We appreciate it. I want to thank our guests for being with us for this conversation. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have. Isla Blumenthal, immigration attorney with Margaret W. Wong and Associates, Jeff Wensing, president of the Ohio Education Association, and U.S. Representative for Ohio's 7th District, Max Miller. Thank you very much for being with us on the call. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
thank you.
All right, we'll take a quick break now. When we come back, we will bring you this year's first installment of The Menu. That's our food series with Cleveland Magazine. This is The Sound of Ideas. I'm Stephanie Haney. We'll be right back. You're with The Sound of Ideas from IdeaStream Public Media. I'm Stephanie Haney. Thanks for staying with us. It's time now for The Menu. That's our food series in partnership with Cleveland Magazine, our first installment of 2026, looking ahead at the trends to come to the year with Cleveland Magazine editor Dylan Stewart. Here's that conversation. Dylan, good to see you. Happy New Year.
Good to see you. You too.
Late in the game, but we're seeing each other for the first
Yeah.
time for The Menu. Excited to really dig in, as we like to do.
For sure.
Now, this is a pre-taped conversation, so we can't take your calls today, but we do always welcome your thoughts on the conversation. You can email us at soi@ideastream.org or send us a message at The Sound of Ideas. All right, Dylan, let's kick off the conversation talking about some restaurant openings. So there's some new things opening. We know Vinny Cimino and his partner Andrew Watts, they're opening Rosie in Ohio City. Tell us about Rosie.
Rosie is probably one of the most exciting restaurant openings this year. You know, Vinny Cimino was just nominated once again for a James Beard Award, and Andrew Watts, his partner, obviously they did the great Cordelia restaurant on East 4th Street. And I'm so excited about Rosie because I really loved Aaliyah, which was in the space, which was the restaurant that previously occupied the space. And what was so cool about Aaliyah is that it was this Mediterranean concept that was centered around this live fire grill, and it was right there in the dining room. You could see it behind the bar. You could see them cooking, and it added this flair to the dining experience. And what's so cool is that Andrew and Vinny are keeping that live fire grill. So we're going to see what they can do experimenting with that. And their approach is going to be more ancestral European, sort of old world cuisine. You know, some of the dishes that they have teased is a celery appetizer with preserved lemon, mint, and ricotta. They are also talking about a pork neck, brown butter, and guanciale, which is, you know, a cured ham. And as well as monkfish with paprika, dates, and sort of a vinaigrette dressing. And they've done some really interesting things with fish at Cordelia, so I think that should be really cool as well. It's going to be a lot more intimate than Cordelia, about 50 seats, and they're going to keep it to 10 to 12 dishes. So, yeah, incredibly excited about that one.
And a rotating menu, as I understand it, right? There's not you might be surprised when you walk in there and see what's available.
Absolutely. And I think it's going to be, because of that intimate setting, I think it could be a little bit more experimental and, you know, certainly hyper seasonal, which, you know, if they're saying that, you know, Cordelia already really has a seasonal approach and a lot of specials, you know, a lot of staples too. But so I think that's something that's really exciting about Rosie is this idea of seeing them kind of get to go a step further in playing with all the ideas that I know are always running through Vinny's head.
Okay, this was something that was kind of shocking for people last year. Chef Brandon Krastowski moved Edwin's. It left Shaker Square. Now it's in the old Nighttown spot. But we do know that there's something that's going to be moving into that space. Sazani Oceana is taking over that former Edwin space in Shaker Square. So tell us what's behind this new restaurant.
Yeah, as you said, when Brandon left, it was really something that kind of turned the neighborhood upside down. There were the community development groups were kind of advocating for him to stay, and they made a great decision moving to the Nighttown area. But now we have something really exciting going on there. We're going to see more of an upscale seafood restaurant, and this is in the Edwin's 2 building, which was also formerly Fire Food and Drink, for those who remember Doug Katz's restaurant there for 25 years. We have Akin Africa, who's the owner of Zanzibar, as well as Angie's Soul Cafe, and he's partnered with Josh Cribbs, who's kind of an investor there. So great to see Josh kind of back in the mix in Cleveland. But yeah, the idea is it's more upscale. We're going to see a seafood menu. We know that they want to do some grilled oysters, a potato crusted halibut, and those are just a couple of the dishes that they've teased so far.
My pescatarian tongue is salivating. That sounds amazing.
And that's what the owner said. It was they're actually a pescatarian, so it was actually really inspired by
my people.
Exactly.
Okay, so Will Hollingsworth,
Yes.
He's got the hospitality business, buildings, and food, and is opening Easy Out. This will be a new sports bar in Lakewood. This seems to be part of a trend, and I know we're going to talk about this in a future installment of the menu, but the return of the sports bar. So high level now, little preview. How are you feeling about this trend?
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. There's an affordability issue in this country right now, and food has been hit among the hardest. And when you look at restaurants, a little bit of inside baseball, but the restaurants, despite people being having some sticker shock around a $17 burger or whatever they're seeing, we hear this all the time, but restaurants operate at an extremely thin profit margin, typically below 5%, often around 2%. And, I think what that is creating is this trend, that's kind of bucking the last 10 years of this sort of high-low, fine dining / casual blend. And we're kind of seeing that middle fall out, and it turn into a lot of kind of lower brow, and I don't mean that in a bad way, type of restaurants, and the finer dining restaurants start to open. And I think that the sports bar trend fits right in that. And I think it's a return to really our roots. I grew up going to sports bars, and that was sort of the thing until we had this food revolution, in starting in the 2000s. So Will Hollingsworth brings a level of sophistication to anything he does. So I think we've seen shades of what he'll be doing there at Good Company, at Prosperity Social Club, and things like that. But I think this one's really exciting to bring that sports culture in. He's also partnering with Jill Veda, who is a James Beard nominee from, Salt, now defunct, but a long-time great restaurant in Lakewood. And so I think she'll bring an extra level of sophistication to that too. But, you're still seeing wings, chili, dad beer, things like that. They even hope to be open by the Super Bowl. So, you can kind of watch the big game at a cool new sports bar, which will be really exciting.
Okay, that is coming up very quick. That'll be here soon.
Yeah, and all of these restaurants that we discussed hope to open in the first part of this year. Sazani is shooting for Valentine's Day, and Rosie had end of January sort of slated as their open date. So, we've got 3 really big restaurant openings in the first part of this year, which is exciting.
A lot to look forward to for the foodies.
Yes.
All right, let's talk about an article that was recently published in Cleveland Magazine dealing with sober sips. We know that lots of people are taking a break from drinking this time of year. Are you seeing more bars and restaurants do the non-alcoholic option thing?
We are. It's almost a requirement these days. And, there are different options for it. There are certainly just people who are just removing the alcohol from some of their cocktails, which is fun. But I think the best ones are where people are using zero proof alcohol. I think it gives a little bit of that slow sip experience that you get with a cocktail, rather than more of a juice type of experience. I chug some of these mocktails down in 2 sips if they don't have the zero proof in them.
Right. And it costs money to make those drinks, so you're paying for them, so you don't want to drink it in 2 seconds.
Exactly. But yeah, the trend that they say, in I think 2001, you had 72% of people saying that they drank, and now we're down to 62%. So
Wow.
it's not just Gen Z, though that gets talked a lot about. It's really across generations, and so really. But what's so cool is that yes, your favorite restaurants, Cordelia, which we discussed today, your favorite cocktail bars, the Fairmount in Cleveland Heights, Amazonia in Lakewood, they're all doing non-alcoholic cocktails. And what I think is so neat is that gives people who don't drink a reason to go out with their friends and experience these things. So if you are trying to drink less, or you are trying to do dry January, it doesn't mean you have to stay inside. And I've even seen certain people, they have one cocktail with alcohol in it, but they want to drive home or not be hungover the next day, so their second one is a mocktail. And so I think really what's neat about this is it serves so many different people and kind of ways to change your relationship with alcohol.
Sure. And also a way to maybe fly under the radar if that's something that's important to you with not having an alcoholic beverage, because there are all kinds of social considerations there in terms of that.
Absolutely.
All right, Dylan, as we do every time when we get together for the menu, we have to ask you, where are you eating this weekend?
So I am, it's been so cold that there's nothing better than a big bowl of soup. So I'm heading to Foley's this weekend. I'm going to get a nice bowl of pho and, take that home, sit on the couch and just try to warm up.
We love takeout on a cold day.
Yes, and you
Absolutely.
can't beat takeout from really anywhere in Asia Town, but we're big fans of Foley right now.
Okay, there you have it. All right, Dylan Stewart, editor at Cleveland Magazine. Thanks for stopping by today.